Well, welcome to the Tuesday show with CJ and Ted. This is the first time we've recorded since we had the news of the death of Queen Elizabeth II. For myself personally, without any apologies, it's something that I'm sad about to have lost the Queen. She's certainly been a constant in my life and a few decades before that as well.
As Charles Dickens wrote in the novel A Tale of Two Cities, it was the best of times and it was the worst of times. The tragic loss of Her Majesty the Queen and the extension of His Majesty the King. That's the best of times part, but the worst of times part is the death of Her Majesty the Queen.
It's strange because it's one of those things that you know will come, but then when it does, especially without any long-running illness or, sort of clues to that effect, it is, even though she was 96, it just still comes as a surprise. I think because it's somebody that's always been there. Always been a constant. And I say unashamed to be sad about it because there are lots of constants in our lives which do go away. We always think of, our parents are going to be around forever, or even our grandparents are going to be around forever. Uncles, aunts, and other people around us, people who perhaps have an impact on our lives who aren't related to us. When those people go away and when things change like that, it's sort of difficult because it ends an era. It ends, the old guard. When my grandparents both died, and then my uncles of the same generation then go. It's like, well, that's the last link. That's the last link to them and to that generation, and that becomes it becomes difficult. Or, sad rather to see that happen.
It almost breaks the illusion, doesn't it? Like you say, you think to yourself, my grandparents are going to be around forever, my parents are going to be around forever, hell, I'm going to live forever. Death isn't something that we really think about on a daily basis. But then when, something like that does happen, it does it breaks that illusion of immortality, and you suddenly start thinking about, your own mortality quite seriously, I think. Especially when it's a very close family member as well. I remember, when my nan passed away. That was quite a tragic time for all of us. I don't remember my father passing away. I was way too young at that point. But I think for me, so you could easily probably call me an emotionless robot. When it comes to this kind of thing, because it's that I understand what death is. I understand it happens to us all eventually, and to a point, I am prepared that it is going to strike the people that I know at some point, and it will eventually get me as well. And I guess I'm just kind of comfortable with that notion. So I don't generally get upset by it. And I guess people could call me a bit emotionless for that. A bit heartless, but I guess it's one of the three constants of life, isn't it? Birth, taxes, and death.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's there. It's going to happen. Just don't think about it. Just get on with your life. I'm quite happy, living in blissful ignorance that I'm going to live forever, but I know that I won't live forever.
I think a lot of it has to do with just the passage of time and being and becoming older yourself. For example, I mean, you're 10 years younger than I am. Mm-hmm. So,
and I don't look a day over 26.
The thing is, when you get to a certain age, when other generations have sort of peeled away, and you think, "Oh gosh, it's just me now," and then you get to the point where you think, "Well, hang on a minute, there's plenty now. There's people that rely on me, but actually, who do I rely on?" And you realise that actually, oh crikey, I'm the dad. Mm-hmm. I'm the adult. I'm the person in charge. Believe it or not.
Yeah, I'm at the top of the tree right now.
Yeah. How did that happen? And I've had that a few times over the last few years. But it's the same as going to hospital and you meet a doctor who's much younger than you, and you think, oh crikey, it's not to insult that person. It's just sometimes you think, with things that go on, especially in public life and in politics, you think, oh, well, surely the adults are going to sort this out.
Yeah,
and then you realise that those adults are, in some cases, younger than you. You think, oh, God,
Yeah.
We really are screwed.
But that's like you almost instinctively want to say, well, I should be able to look to the elders for help and guidance. And like you say, in the case of the the young doctors, you're just like, hang on a minute, you're what, 27? You're a lot younger than I am, and you're telling me what I should be doing. This doesn't feel right, but it's just the way it is now.
I think there's that sort of constant and absolute confidence in the Queen to be doing the right thing at all times, and that, and when you lose that, you think, oh, what now? I mean, we know what now, and I personally have every confidence in the new king.
Yeah, I've got nothing against him, but in the the reality of today's society, what difference does it make? He's not a lawmaker. He's just the head of state. Doesn't really make much difference to how we lead our lives, or how the country is governed. In the reality of it, nothing is going to change.
I think that would be the ideal, that nothing changes, and when nothing changes, it doesn't change for the better. It doesn't change for the worst, and I think that's probably the most important thing. And yes, he doesn't make the laws, but he is part of the country, part of the makeup of the country and the ethos of the country. And I think that's an important thing to have, because I often think to myself, well, where would we be if we didn't have that? Well, then we'd be living in a republic, and then we have a completely elected head of state who we have to suffer for 4 or 5 years.
True.
It doesn't have the same. Certainly doesn't have the same stability to it.
No, and I think from, like you say, head of state continuity aspect, and it was something interesting they said on the proclamation program yesterday, is that if there's a death, let's say the President of the United States of America, for example, or any republic, if they do pass away unexpectedly for whatever reason, there's a whole process to go through to elect a new head of state. Whereas, for the UK with the monarchy, that's not the case at all. Immediately upon the death of one monarch, the immediate successor or the immediate heir then takes the throne and takes that position. So from a continuity perspective, that's there and is quite good. But in terms of like I say, actually how the country is governed and how we live our day-to-day lives, in theory, nothing should change. It's just how then this new monarch presents themselves in the public eye. That's the important factor, and that's the bit that we'll be keeping a close eye on for any changes. But King Charles III, before ascending to the throne, was quite prevalent in the public eye anyway, and I don't imagine that's going to change at all. Just his immediate actions upon arriving at Buckingham Palace kind of demonstrate that. Rather than going into the palace, he was outside greeting the crowd. And I think that says a lot for how he's going to deport himself as a monarch.
Monarchy can be quite a sort of contentious subject anyway, but I don't know. I think going back to my, where are the grown-ups? There's something about having a monarchy that makes me think, which all of the armed forces are sworn to. Something that makes me think, well, actually, not this government, but if we had a ridiculous tyrannical government pop up, if we didn't have a monarchy, who's going to start the Civil War?
Okay. I mean, didn't we have a ridiculous tyrannical government, or haven't we got one right now?
I didn't say that. But I'm not going to necessarily disavow you.
I'll say you're not going to deny it. Controversial. But yes,
it's true. It is. It's a check. It's a check and balance. And whilst we don't have a great amount of power as such vested in the sovereign, it is still something to consider to be a backstop.
Yeah, and I don't know the full ins and outs specifically, but I'm sure there is, especially like any new bill gets passed through Parliament, it does actually land on the monarch's desk at some point for, to be signed and approved. And 100%. I believe the monarch has the power to deny anything going through Parliament. I think the reason that they generally don't is they basically then look to remove the monarchy, and nobody wants. Well, they don't want that. I believe, I might be completely wrong. That's just, I guess that's kind of just rumour that I've heard over the years, is that the monarchy does have that power to stop bills going through Parliament, or once they've gone through Parliament, to then stop them becoming law. But they just don't.
Which is handy, though. It's handy to know that that's there, because sometimes governments do silly things.
Yeah.
I like to think that actually, in some way, that scenario is a little bit like Dad's Army and Sergeant Wilson, who would sit there and casually say, "Do you think that's wise, sir?"
Yeah. Well, I also kind of hope that's part and parcel of the point of the weekly audience as well, between the Prime Minister and the monarch. Those kind of issues are discussed, and the monarch can then provide their feedback or whatever, and that is then taken into account at the point a bill is passed through Parliament. But yeah, like you say, interesting to know that, if true, that mechanism is there, to stop stupid things from happening. I mean, I guess as head of state, that's part and parcel of their duty anyway, is to stop the country from falling into turmoil due to the ridiculousness of government.
Yeah.
So one would hope.
One would hope.
One would hope. But like I say, I'm like you, I think most people know that I'm a royalist anyway. I'm a big fan of the royal family and what they do. Whilst, yes, you can argue that there's no tangible value to them being around, I feel like they are a useful part of the establishment. Like I say, people enjoy visiting the royal family. There is the commercial tourist aspect to it, but there's also the traditional aspects as well, and the fact that we get so much pomp and ceremony out of them as well. You just have to look at the official birthday parade each year. We have to look at, even just now in the last couple of days, the proclamation ceremonies that happen, the coronation that's going to happen. It's all massive pomp and ceremony that personally I love to watch. I love all of that stuff.
Yeah.
And I think millions of people, hundreds of millions of people around the world enjoy that as well. And that's kind of their big sell for me. It's nothing to do with tourism and all that, because let's be honest, you can look at Buckingham Palace on Google if you really want. Go on Google Street View and you can have a look at it.
Well, often the argument is, well, Buckingham Palace would still be there, but it wouldn't. That's like it's like assuming that Stonehenge wouldn't be an absolute massive draw if it still had some druids from the Dark Ages still living there.
Some weird pagan ceremony still going on. Yeah, people would want to watch it.
Yeah. It's a nonsense to say that these palaces would still be just as popular, because they wouldn't be, because what use is a palace if it doesn't contain a queen or a king?
The thing is,
or a royal family.
But how many thousands of people travel, or go to Buckingham Palace, for 11 o'clock every day to watch the changing of the guard? Because even that, as a daily, during the summer, as a daily event, attracts a massive crowd. People love watching it. I love watching it. I've only ever seen it live once. I just wish I could go more often, because it's a great piece of ceremonial thing. There's no real point to it apart from you get to see shiny soldiers marching up and down the square, changing over the guard, playing music, and then disappearing again. What's not to love? Just little bits like that, and you wouldn't get that if the monarchy didn't exist.
Exactly.
The commercial tourism aspect is there. People do come from all over the world just to see that, and then in turn then end up spending money in London, contributing to the economy. But it's all the other work that the royal family does as well, all the charity work that they do, and just being present, in the public eye, and showing people that actually it's okay to leave the comfort of your home and go out and do something useful with your time.
Well, if you look at many of the benefits and things that various members of the royal family get involved in, like things like the Prince's Trust, the Duke of Edinburgh Award Scheme.
Yeah,
these are chunky old things there to help people across the country.
Yeah,
but also diplomacy as well. The one good thing that we do have is, no matter who we elect as our Prime Minister, our head of state, the person that we can, roll out to deal with the other heads of state is a monarch.
Yeah. It's almost forcing the other heads of state to behave themselves, isn't it?
Yeah.
You just go, hey, you're coming into our home that's been around for centuries. You're going to behave yourself.
Yeah. Also, in a little way, it's like playing top trumps. No pun intended, but you got. Okay. Look, you. I see your president. And I'll raise you a king.
So I'll raise you a king.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, agreed.
Yeah. I don't think that anybody has an emperor, do they?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't know what Kim Jong Fatface calls himself.
I think the last person to have an imperial title was the Queen Mother, who I think was the last Empress of India.
Yeah, I think you're right, actually, yeah. That was me. I was thinking Napoleon. Yeah. I don't know why. I thought about Napoleon at that point. But no, yeah, I think you're right. Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, yeah. That's a mouthful, isn't it? Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. One hell of a title. Can you imagine that? Just going on a Zoom call, but having such a massive title that it takes you 10 minutes to get through it. Yes, hello everyone. I'm Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, Empress of India, mother to Queen Elizabeth II, and etc., etc. I don't know what all the titles were, but this is the thing. I assume there's lots of them. It's, again, going back to King Charles's address, national address. He's talking about Prince William taking on all of his Scottish titles, and I'm like, how many are there? Of course, I had to go and Google it, and I don't remember any of them now. But there's going to be a lot of them, There
are many, yeah.
And William's taken on, he's now Prince of Wales, Duke of Cornwall, Duchy of Cornwall, amongst all the other stuff that he gets now as well. It's interesting times if you're a royalist and following all the changes that are going to happen in the palaces and all that. But yeah, I wonder if King Charles will have to be turfed out of Clarence House like Her Majesty the Queen did by Winston Churchill. Oh, but I want to stay here. Don't care. Get over there, Buckhouse. That's your home now. Get out there. I can just imagine him literally kicking him out. Oh, bless her.
Almost everything to do with anything with the title royal in it, usually involves a crown.
Yes.
So whether it's the Royal Air Force or regiments in the army, they all tend to have a badge or a crest with a crown on it, on the top of it, and that's the King's crown or the Queen's crown.
Yep.
Even the Royal Mail.
Yep.
So our mail service across the country is called Royal Mail. Is it still a public thing, or is it?
Yeah.
Because what was that? What happened when they sold off the post office or whatever?
Oh, actually, no. Yeah, I think it's a privatised business.
Yeah,
but it still has like some element of government control because of the naming.
It was called something ridiculous, though, wasn't it? Something like consignia or something.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I don't know if that's still a thing though. Actually,
I don't think. I think they dropped it after a short while.
Yeah, maybe it was renationalised. I'm not sure.
Yeah, but anyway, all of these things have crowns on.
They do.
And the people within that wear crowns. So, whether you've got a crown on the badge on your hat or crowns on your arm, because sometimes it denotes rank.
Yep.
So you have chevrons and you have crowns. We have crowns all over the shop. The police, the army, the Air Force, the Navy.
Fire service, NHS, like the ambulance service. They all have crowns on them.
Yeah.
The Royal Mail is an interesting one, actually, because there's, I think there's only one remaining George VI postbox in the UK.
Really?
That still has the GR cipher on it with the King's crown, or the George VI crown. There is only one, I'm sure. Google it, and then you can show it on the screen. And I'm sure there's only one left.
Right.
I'm interested in whether that's going to stay there.
Well, no, because there have been ones from others as well. I'm sure I've seen VR ones as well.
Maybe.
I think the convention is that if something is stood there solid like that, it doesn't get changed. It's like coins. The only reason that we don't have any George coins is because the coins go out of circulation and replaced with new coins.
I was going to say, at the point they go back to the banks, they're then returned to the Bank of England.
Yeah, that's right.
Be recycled correctly.
But we don't change the coins. We don't say, okay, we're going to call in all the 10p pieces or anything like that. Because when I was young, the 10p pieces were different. They were slightly bigger, and the what's it called, 5p piece, that was bigger as well.
Yeah, 50p changed as well.
Yeah, largely when I was young, half of the maybe not half, but it felt like about half of the 5p pieces, half of them said 5 new pence, and the other half was still shilling. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, I think it kind of helped during the reign of Queen Elizabeth that the entire currency changed.
Yeah.
The entire system of or denomination of currency completely changed from pounds, shilling, pence to just pounds and pence. The decimal system. I think that helped when it came to withdrawing a lot of the older currency from George's era. Yeah. I feel like Elizabethan currency will be around for quite a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, they were last time, really. If you think about it, it was only 1972 when they went metric. So before that...
Yeah, I imagine there was a lot of George coins kicking around at that point.
Yeah, there were.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I didn't even consider that because, I remember going through a coin change. I mean, it must have been somewhere between 25 and 30 years ago now. Because I think I was visiting my nan in London, and we had like bigger and heavier 50p pieces.
Yeah.
And at that point, they were kind of being taken out of circulation and to be replaced by the new, smaller, lighter weight ones. Like I say, and that was only, coming up to 30 years ago. Maybe it was 30 years ago. I'm not sure. But either way, I do recall going through a coin change in my lifetime. And I don't really know how long it took overall to do. But, I imagine we'll probably still see a lot of Elizabethan currency for quite some time. But then again, we also may not. Because how often do you pay for things with cash?
That's true.
And how much cash do you actually carry on you? I don't carry cash with me. It's all done electronically now. And I wouldn't be surprised if any King Charles currency is actually, fully in circulation quite quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Notes mostly, though.
Yeah, notes for sure, yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember pound notes?
No,
you probably
I don't.
Won't, will you?
No, I'm too young for that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, I remember pound notes. It was a great way to feel like you were rich, because,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's one of those. So I'm just thinking about like America with their dollar bills. Always, you'd see in TV and movies, people pulling out big wads of notes and doing the whole flicking through and all that. And I'd be like, these people are all super rich. It's not. They're all just dollar bills.
Yeah.
They've got $20 on them in singles, and it makes them look really rich, and that's why everyone has a money clip. And people have asked me if I have a money clip or want a money clip. I'm like, well, no, but no requirement for one, because the most I ever carry on me is maybe two £20 notes.
Yeah,
that's pretty much it. But even then, it's been a long time since I've done that because everything's electronic now.
Well, they're walking around with notes that are worth about 80p.
Yeah, about 80p right now.
Yeah. Imagine if you were carrying around bits of paper for 80p. Ridiculous.
Well, people used to do that. Maybe not 80p, but we used to have pound notes.
Yeah.
But then I do wonder why we got rid of them. Why did we ever get rid of pound notes?
Yeah, they were fun.
I mean, like I said, I've never seen one. I don't know what it looks like, but the smallest I've ever known is a 5, and the largest is a 50.
Yeah.
So, because again, I'm sure £100 notes were a thing at one point. I don't know if they still are, or if there is any kind of legal tender that is a £100 note.
Yeah, they exist. The highest I've ever walked around with is a £50 note.
Yeah,
and the smallest a £1 note. So there we go.
Oh, there you go.
There you go, indeed. But
back to the Crown conversation.
Oh yeah, so the Crown.
So in Crown's not the TV show. Just
yeah. So everything has a crown. But then the last time there was a change of monarch from George to Elizabeth, the crown changed.
Yeah, completely different design to...
Yeah. So there's every expectation that the crown may change again.
I'm pretty sure it will, yeah.
I think so too.
Yeah, but it did get me thinking though about the cipher design is going to change. Just the crown in general, the design for imagery, etc., is going to change, and it made me think. So, like people who are retired officers from the forces, or anyone that's entitled to wear a uniform that has the monarch's crown on there, or the sovereign's crown, do they then have to change their badges as well? Obviously, for current serving personnel, all their badging will need to change, assuming the crown design does change. But then if that is the case, do retired personnel still do the same thing? That's kind of the question that I have.
If I was guessing, because having not done any preparation for that question, it will be a guess. If I was guessing, I would say that they would keep their existing crowns. I think if they were being reissued with, or they were getting themselves a new uniform or whatever it may be, then they would then have the new crown. But I think that they would be perfectly entitled to wear the old crown.
Yeah.
In the same way as with medals.
Yeah.
Medals have the currently, not currently, but up until very recently, if you were issued a medal, it would have an image of the Queen on it.
Yeah.
Well, those medals are not now defunct.
No, but you're not going to replace them at the same time. You're going to keep them, and they'll remain with the Queen's head on.
In the same way as if you have if you're an officer and you have a commissioning scroll, the scroll won't change. It will be just as valid for when there's a change of monarch. But yes, all future ones would be the new style.
Yeah, it just made me think about it, because I was like, especially when you look at army ranks, from like major and above, they've all got a crown on them. On each shoulder, and it's like, well, if you're retired, so retired officers are allowed to continue wearing their uniform for official occasions. Do they then have to go and have those rank badges replaced with King's Crown or whatever the new design is? It may even go back to an old design like the KG6 crown. We don't know yet. But it's interesting that what kind of triggered it was I was watching a part of the proclamation event yesterday, and there's a bit where all these people who are dressed in clothes that appear to just be made out of the royal standard, with big chains on, and then on kind of the base of each chain, so front and back, was what appeared to be a king's crown rather than a queen's crown. And it's
interesting.
It kind of triggered it for me, and I was like, ooh, I wonder.
Yeah.
So, like I say,
that could well be. Well, I mean, if that's something separate, then there's no reason why they couldn't use old stock.
No, exactly. Yeah, I guess they could have used old stuff.
I wonder what old stock exists.
Well, I remember many years ago, in preparation for an event such as this, I did a lot of research into, could I buy badges and rank badges, cap badges, anything that I needed? Could I buy it in King's Crown?
Yeah.
And it was only through then, during my research, that I spotted that every monarch, their crown design is slightly different, which then stopped me from buying said paraphernalia. No, that's the wrong word. But you know what I mean? It stopped me from buying all these accoutrements, for my uniform at that point. I mean, apart from that, I was being, well, as it turns out now, I'm no longer in the organisation. I haven't been for, 5 years now.
Yeah.
I would have been way premature if I actually went out and bought any of that stuff.
Yeah.
It was super premature. It's just, I'm not in the organisation anymore, so it's not a requirement for me. But I just thought about it. I thought it was an interesting question to ask.
Yeah, because I think they're sort of colloquially known as King's Crown, Queen's Crown, but as you say, other variation exists, and they are two types of the last two crowns that have been used are two different types of crown, but they're not necessarily designated by the gender of the monarch.
I'll say it's not gender. I'll say they're not gender specific, are they?
No.
And I think the example that kind of came to mind as well was Queen Victoria's crown. Her cipher was completely different from both King George VI and Elizabeth II. I know that there were monarchs between them as well.
Yeah.
But I don't know what kind of ciphers they had. I don't even know if, I want to say Edward, the guy that was before King George VI. Is that King Edward?
Well, briefly. And
yeah, that's what I mean. But
that was his brother, yes.
Because he was very brief. I don't even know if he had a cipher or any kind of accoutrements actually produced at that point. Apart from the fact that we were in between world wars at that point as well.
Yeah.
But this is the interesting thing. And like you say, the whole thing about King's Crown, Queen's Crown, anyone that's kind of alive now will have known one, if not two, of the previous monarchs' crowns and ciphers.
Yeah.
It would only go back to King George VI. I don't think there's anybody alive that was around. Actually, there probably is. I can't remember I can't remember the coronation date of King George VI.
I don't remember exactly.
Sometime in the 30s. It was just before the Second World War broke out, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, you'd have to be pretty old. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, you'd have to be pretty old to get that. But it's like I say, just an interesting question I thought about. But it's a nice ceremony as well. A nice kind of presentation to watch. The first time a proclamation was televised, or the parts inside St James Palace were televised. Quite an historic occasion.
Yeah,
as they kept saying on TV.
Yeah.
Is that the right way to say it? An historic, or is it ahistoric?
Ahistoric. I think ahistoric.
I think it is ahistoric, but it just sounds weird whenever I hear someone say it, whenever I try to say it.
It's one of those things where it is, but I'm not entirely sure why it is.
No. Because English. Because why not? It's English. We'll just throw something at you just to confuse you.
Yeah. Well, there are quite a few rules in English, and then there's almost as much in the way of exceptions to the rules. So it is a wonder what happens to the to the crown. But the other thing was, as I mentioned this earlier, we got we got potentially a glimpse of the cipher for the king on that day, in fact, because he had a type-in with what appeared to be a cipher with a crown above a C and an R. Now, interestingly, or not interestingly, I was actually surprised that he went with Charles as his name.
I wasn't surprised by that.
Well, I say surprised. I mean, I wasn't shocked to my very core. No, but I had heard some time ago that he may have decided to go for George instead.
I guess it's one of those things, and as I kind of alluded to on the presentation yesterday, that he has spent a bit of time kind of thinking about it. He was obviously aware that it was coming. No one's going to live forever, let's be honest, and no offense intended by that at all. So he is, in his own time, spent time thinking about it. He probably even consulted Queen Elizabeth about it as well, to find out what kind of the best approach is, or what her wishes might be, and probably just ended up landing on, well, actually, you know what? There's nothing wrong with King Charles III. Well, I mean, what would you prefer, King Charles III, where you get to continue using the name that you've had for the last 70-odd years?
Yeah, it's a long time, isn't it? It's a long time to have a name.
Exactly, and then suddenly someone goes, actually, no, we're going to call you George now. And or does he then, become King George VII? And it's like, I mean, if it was me personally, I'd just be like, well, I'll just go with Charles III. The name I've always had. It's the name I've always known. It just makes sense to me. And the same thing for William when he ascends eventually. Yeah. He'll probably end up becoming William the whatever number that is. Yeah.
I think it might be far too confusing for people these days. Not suggesting that people are stupid these days, but
no. But King George VI wasn't a George, was he? He was Albert.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was an Albert. So I can't remember whether that was a political thing because of the political times. I'm not sure.
It was just something that was done. You would choose a name in the same way that popes choose a name, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Pope John Paul, Pope John Paul George, Pope John Paul George and Ringo.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was I going to say about ciphers? Oh, that was the other thing. So I was talking about changing of badges and people who are retired, do they have to change their badges? What about, so again, for those that don't know, any member of the military who has served in the royal household wear the royal cipher on their epaulets. And up until, very recently, it was the Elizabeth II cipher, the E2R.
Yeah.
Those people that served with Queen Elizabeth II, who are currently wearing the royal cipher, are they keeping those ciphers, or will they have to change those to the King Charles cipher?
That's a very good question that we also don't know the answer to.
I mean, to me, it would make sense that they keep E2R because it was with Queen Elizabeth that they served. But then again, they also are still serving King Charles.
Yes. Are you aide-de-camp to the Queen, and then when the Queen is no more, you then become, in some way, because you have been an aide-de-camp, you become aide-de-camp to the King.
Yeah. I wonder if it's one of those appointments that is kind of for life, even though you're not active in that role.
Or maybe because you wear the badge for life. Well, not for life, but because if you wear the badge for the remainder of your career, then perhaps it would stand to reason that you are, in effect, always that thing.
Yeah. It's like they were saying yesterday with the Privy Council and, currently the Extension Council, they are appointed for life. At the time they were appointed, that's it. They're just on the council for the rest of their life. I guess you'd have to do something quite heinous to get knocked off the council, the Privy Council. But yeah, I wonder if that's the same if you served in the royal household, like you say, if you're an aide-de-camp.
I think it probably classes as a job that you still have.
Yeah, maybe like a reserve posting in the end, like if you leave the regulars, you become a reservist. You sit on a list to be called upon at any point.
It's like in law, the Queen's Council will become King's Council. That automatically is the case because they're then counsel to the King. What of somebody who was Queen's Counsel and has retired? So he's no longer practicing as a barrister. Well, I would assume that they probably, regardless of whether they have a practice or not, or regardless of whether they're not anybody's counsel because they're a judge or they are retired, they would probably still become KC.
Yeah.
Should they be needed?
Yeah. No, I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
Because like you say, even if you're retired, especially if you are in that position of sovereign's aid in any capacity, you could be called upon at any point.
Yeah.
Even if a replacement's found, they could just actually be like, you know what, actually, I just want kind of John's opinion on this because he always has some good ideas. Oh, but he's 80-something living in a retirement home. I don't care. Bring him in. Wheel him in. Yeah. But no need to stand, John. Just you stay there. You imagine that King walks in, and just a guy in a wheelchair, and he's like, "Don't get up." Yeah.
But then going back to your question, it could be the same thing. It could be a case of, well, you held the commission, right? It never gets ripped up and burnt in your face.
No, it's still a sovereign's commission.
You could, in theory, say, well, you were given the Queen's commission, so you're coming and working for the King. I'm retired. I don't care. I don't know how deep that goes.
No, I don't. No. And that's what I mean. I imagine if you're retired, you kind of maybe stay with the badges that you had at the point of retirement. But again, it also depends on how official your capacity as a retired officer is. If you are attending, a royal garden party as a retired officer, chances are you're probably going to change your badges. So I don't imagine it's proper. Well, it would be proper to turn up to any kind of royal engagement as a retired officer still wearing the badges you wore at the point of retirement. You would have changed them at some point. But if it's just, you're invited to the odd dining in night here and there.
Yeah. Then again, it would be entirely appropriate if you were a retired officer wearing formation badges that have since changed.
Exactly, yeah. That's it, yeah. If you have a formation badge of some description, yeah. Pioneer Corps comes to mind. Don't ask me why that came to mind, but I was just suddenly remember, back in the day when I spent a small amount of time with the Army cadets, there was an old sergeant major there who wore his Pioneers mess dress and badges, but they didn't exist at that point. At least I don't think they did. I'm pretty sure they didn't exist. They were kind of done at that point. The regiment was disbanded, but he still wore that uniform with all the...
Maybe we've come up with the answer then. So say, for example, you have a retired officer who is perfectly entitled to wear the uniform of a regiment that no longer exists. He can't have a different crown on a badge that never actually had that crown.
Yeah, so you can't wear a rank badge on a uniform that didn't have that rank badge. It makes sense to me.
Yeah. I think that may be the answer.
I feel like it might be.
If you're a total nerd and you know different, please do get in the comments and let us know where we're wrong. And that goes for everything that we say.
Yeah.
Always let us know if we're wrong.
I mean, I assume at this point we're always right because no one ever writes anything in the comments.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we are always right.
That's our immunity. Nobody commented, therefore we are right.
Exactly. No one told me otherwise, therefore it's right. Defense 101.
Yeah.
You didn't tell me I couldn't.
Yes, but it does make you wonder about all the things that will change. Crowns being just one of them. As you say, ciphers, it could be on post boxes in the future.
Yeah.
I do think the old post boxes remain, but if they're replaced, they'll be replaced with a new one.
I think most of them will eventually get replaced. Post boxes get replaced all the time.
Well, if they're broken.
Exactly.
There are many that aren't replaced because they've been around for donkey's years.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think a lot of them will get replaced eventually. And I realise that, Queen Elizabeth II's reign was 70 years long. And yes, a lot changes in that time. And yeah, most post boxes at that point have been replaced. Like I said, I'm pretty sure there's still a George VI post box kicking around somewhere. I think you said there might be even a Victorian post box or two around and about. I don't know where they are, if that is true, but it wouldn't surprise me. But on kind of the flip of it, most of them are Elizabeth II. So I wouldn't be surprised if most of them get changed to Charles III. Eventually. It won't be an immediate thing, because can you imagine the cost of all of this as well?
Yeah.
Changing post boxes, changing ciphers on everything, or anything that's got a crown integrated into it. The amount of money it's going to cost to change all of those over. I mean, I'm even thinking about, Queen's colours, on like Troop in the Colour, they got the flag with all the battle honours and stuff on. That has a Queen's crown set on the top. They've got to change all of those now.
Yeah.
That means they've got to have a laying up ceremony for each colour to then present a new one with the King's crown on it.
But again, do they change them
exactly
at that time or later? Because, as you say, 70 years is a long time, and most colours will have been, any colours that are in use will have been changed in a 70-year period.
Absolutely.
I don't know how often they change them.
I feel like it's just kind of as and when they need changing.
Right. I've just been on Google.
Google.
Other search engines are available. The Britain's oldest red postbox is still in use after 161 years.
Okay.
And still bears Queen Victoria's initials.
Oh, there you go. Where is it?
It's in a Dorset village of Holwell.
Okay.
It arrived in the village in 1853. It bears the initials of Queen Victoria, who was on the throne at the time. Villagers mounted a campaign to restore the historic box to its former glory.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Yes.
I didn't know that was a thing. I genuinely thought that the George postbox that was still in use was the last one.
Yeah, so there we go.
Actually, there's probably more G6Rs kicking around then. Because there's not one far from where we are. Like, there's one in Northamptonshire somewhere, I'm sure there is.
Yeah.
So maybe there's a lot more then. Maybe my information is completely false. I'm nothing if not factual.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I've just thought of some other things that will change and will take some getting used to.
Go on.
His Majesty's ship, His Majesty's prison.
Yep. His Majesty's Revenue and Customs.
Yes.
Although, actually, interestingly, so I'm going to show you something. So it dawned on me while we were conversing earlier on, actually, because I thought, do the letters from HMRC say Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs? And actually, they don't. So let's make sure. There you go. It just says HM Revenue and Customs.
Right, yep.
So I was like, oh, they'll have to change all of that. No, they won't. But actually, again, I'm just going to go back to that. Yeah, I'm just going to go back to that. So there you go. The crown is going to have to change.
Yeah.
Because that's got a Queen's crown on it. Or, sorry, the Queen Elizabeth II crown. Again, assuming it's all going to change, which we think it will, based on what we've seen already. So,
yeah.
But yeah, everything like that's going to have to change. And actually, no. You know what? No, scratch that. I was going to say something else about a couple of the newer ships that are out. Because there's 2 new aircraft carriers, isn't there? HMS Queen Elizabeth and HMS Prince of Wales. Because it dawned on me yesterday whilst I'm watching the proclamation that, well, hang on a minute, the Prince of Wales is now the king, but obviously there's now a new Prince of Wales, as is tradition. The heir to the throne becomes the Prince of Wales. So, yeah, so it immediately stifled any concern I have about the naming of these vessels.
I'm glad your mind is now at rest.
Yes, yeah. Yes, I'm truly at peace with it now, yeah.
Excellent. I did see something on Twitter, something about people's thoughts first going. Well, if they think about King Charles, the first thing they think of is Spaniel.
Oh, I saw something on social media.
But again, I don't think that's going to be a major issue because it's not going to be very often that you're actually saying King Charles. Most of the time, you'll just be saying the King.
The King,
in the same way as we've always just said the Queen.
Yeah.
We would never say, oh, Queen Elizabeth is coming to tea. I don't think that needed to be said. We'd know who it was.
I also feel maybe to a point some of that is to do with, our own laziness and that it's less syllables to say the Queen than it is Queen Elizabeth. But I don't know, I might be completely wrong, and it might turn out that actually, yes, people will just end up saying the King. But that in itself is going to take some getting used to, the King. God save the King, etc. Anytime, we now have to replace Queen with King, it's going to, I think, for a short time at least, people will be kind of stumbling over themselves. Again, I was watching the proclamation programme yesterday, and the number of times that they almost said, they either did or almost said the Queen and then corrected themselves to King, just made me chuckle a little bit. I was like, I think 'cause we'd all do it. I think that's just how it is. We've said the Queen for so long.
I have to say, one thing that did, well, I mean, not made me chuckle, but maybe inside a little bit, I just had a little chuckle to myself, I suppose, was all the talk of seals. And in my head, every time that a seal was mentioned, I just thought of us, yeah.
Yeah.
But yes, it will take a lot of getting used to. And as you say, just simple things like the national anthem, cries of, God save the King, is going to be, it's going to take some getting used to. But talking about changing things and, getting used to the new ways and the new national anthem, I would say that God Save the King is probably a good place to end this episode.
I agree. God save the King.